All right, now we're live.
Sweet.
For those that don't know, I thought I set it to live, but I didn't. So we went on for probably a good minute before realizing. But here we are. We're here. So hello there.
In
Welcome
the
to the
wise
podcast.
words of Hannah Montana, everyone makes mistakes and everyone has those days. So, it's just one of those days.
Yep. So as I was saying before, and for those of you who haven't heard, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Sir AOA, our special guest from the last stream. He tweeted me an article from Bounding into Comics, and it is, let me pull it up here. It is called Disney Makes Star Wars Force Healing Even Worse. This whole stream right here is going to be talking about this article. This stream will also be probably not like very common. We didn't plan on doing this at all. That's sort of why I sort of tweeted it out as a surprise Saturday event. So I'm wanting to do these kinds of things as recorded videos. We will get to that, but where this came up so quickly, I just had to take care of it as soon as possible. And we will cover it some more in the next episode of Star Wars Topics. So be ready for that. This will be a heated discussion, I'd say. All right. So without further ado, though, we are going to get into this article. So Disney makes Star Wars Force Healing even worse. I don't know how. I don't know how you can make it worse, but this article will explain it. A new report from Screen Rant details that force healing can now clear your mind and remove the influence of the dark side from individuals. So, that right there, that creates a whole lot of problems.
It really does. And like at first when I first read that, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of neat, I guess." And then my mind just started to kind of run wild and I started to think about all the reasons that this is super problematic. So without further ado, if you want to go ahead and jump into it.
Okay, so as the article says, Bacon quotes from the book. Rey transferred her own force energy to the wounded man at her feet. However, the interaction did more than merely mend a gaping wound. Burned flesh and damaged organs were made whole again, and even the scar on his face disappeared. For the first time in more than a decade, Ben Solo's mind cleared. So I'm guessing that is from the book. It states up here that that quote was from the book Skywalker: A Family at War. Okay, so if you didn't know, that's where it's from, and that whole quote right there, like I thought that in the movie we were led to believe that Leia had been the one that sort of brought Ben back to the light, but apparently it wasn't Ben; it was Rey, and honestly, that sort of like that sort of makes her sacrifice, Leia's sacrifice, nothing. I
It
mean,
definitely lessens it, in my opinion.
what was the point of her to distract him in the middle of a fight so he can get stabbed by Rey? I mean, that's literally the only thing that she did. If that is the case, is just distract him long enough for Rey to stab him. And the only reason why that Rey decided not to let him die, I guess, is because she's the hero and she can't do anything wrong. So, I mean, if this were a different fight and he was fighting somebody that didn't care whether he lived or died, his mother would have just gotten him killed. That's the problem I'm having with that. So,
Well, it's really agitating for me, to be honest, because it's just like, we also have to take into consideration that this was Carrie Fisher's final work. And I feel like what little that they could have done was to respect the sacrifice that she made on screen, you know? Um, I don't know, it just feels like it would make her final role a lot more significant. Um, I don't know. It kind of annoys me a little bit that they're taking the emphasis in a way. off of Leia and Leia's sacrifice and saying, no, this is something that Rey achieved through force healing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they talk about how Baby Yoda, well, it says it in the article, Baby Yoda, but Grogu, uh, how when Grogu healed Grief Karga's wound, that it changed his mind as well. And if you remember in the episode of The Mandalorian where the Mandalorian returns and meets up with Grief Karga, Grief Karga had a plan to turn that child back over to the Imperials. But after he had been force healed by Grogu, he,
He had like a change of perspective.
yes. And apparently that was just Grogu altering his mind.
Okay, so but since you've brought up kind of how this ties in, how this was used not only in what was it, The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker? I don't
Rise of
know.
Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker, but also The Mandalorian, and we've had that conversation on a previous episode of why the Mandalorian's portrayal of force healing is more effective than its portrayal in the sequel trilogy. So with that being said, how do you feel about the representation of the whole change of perspective, change of mind thing in The Mandalorian versus that of The Rise of Skywalker?
It's still done a little bit better. And the reason why I say that is because well, let me put it this way. This will be a little bit of a longer explanation to what you're asking.
Okay.
And it might not seem related at first, but trust me, I'll get to where I'm going. So, back to force projection. Luke was transferring his, I guess, his force energy. I don't know exactly how force projection works. I'll have to read up on that. But I'm just going to say probably his force energy from Octu to another planet entirely, way out in wherever. But and that that wins him pretty pretty good, and he dies afterward, and then Grogu force heals and apparently alters Grief Karga's mind, even though he's not a force user. Apparently, his dark side has been removed.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that works, but Grogu was winded afterward. And yes, you could say that Grogu is young and probably hasn't mastered the Force that well, but Luke was a trained Jedi master,
Mm-hmm.
and he was more powerful than any Jedi in the galaxy at this point. And he died from force projecting himself from one planet to another. But for Rey, you can heal somebody, which is transferring your force energy from you to another being to bring about a healing on that other being. But not only that, but you're also removing a dark side influence from that other being. That is twice the work, especially if you're losing force energy by giving it to someone else. You'd think that you'd be winded. No, not her. If she was winded at all, it wasn't as bad as Luke or Grogu.
Well, this
And
is
that's the problem.
sorry to interject, but this is one of the issues that I've had with this personally, because it's something that I think of anytime you ask someone who is defensive of the whole force projection killing off Luke and Luke's death in general in The Last Jedi. They're like, oh, well, it's something that takes up a lot of power. It's something that it is something that's very strenuous to do. But it seems inconsistent in the fact that it seems like there's kind of other things that have happened throughout the canonical Star Wars universe that are kind of more impressive feats that have went off without a hitch. And I don't understand that. And, to those people, I say, like in our last stream, we were talking about the fact that he kind of just projected an image of himself. I mean, he wasn't there,
Exactly.
So could if you think, I find it hard to believe that Yoda or Mace or Qui-Gon couldn't have pulled that off with without dying, you know. And of course, in the canonical story, like, we have to say now, well, no, that's technically not possible, considering that it killed Luke, and he's supposed to be the most powerful Jedi that's ever lived up until this point. But that's precisely my problem with it. It seems kind of inconsistent. It doesn't seem realistic with the rest of the story.
Exactly. And another thing, I mean, I'll first mention this first. So she also force healed the space snake, and
Great
I mean,
explanation.
look, what I wanted to go into. I mean, I know it's an animal, but kindness to animals could also bring around their mercy. For like, if you're kind to something that's usually pretty vicious, and plus another thing about that, like if you I mean, a good example of what I'm about to say is from Rebels. If you've watched Star Wars Rebels, um, you're supposed to be able to, like, be in tuned with the Force enough to be able to communicate with the animals, I guess, in a way. So some of those vicious animals that you would see in certain episodes that I think it was Ezra and Kanan were able to tame just by using the Force. It's not like them altering the mind. It's more of them just bringing about an understanding through the Force. And the thing is, on certain animals, they, I might not be explaining this right. It's been a while since I've seen those episodes. I need to research more before I do these kinds of things. But on certain animals, like, once you, I guess, release them from your influence, they would go back to being,
Mm-hmm.
vicious in ways. And but I wouldn't say all of them are like that. And the thing is, like, and this applies more for Grief Karga than anybody from The Mandalorian. He had a change of heart because he's seen what that child can do. And not only that, but that child, despite him wanting to return it to the fractured empire fragment that's there, he had a change of heart because of what it did for him. And it wasn't, I don't believe it was because Grogu altered
His
the
mind, per
mind.
se. It's because
I mean, if
he
Grogu
showed
isn't,
what he can do.
yeah. I mean, if Grogu isn't as powerful as Luke or as powerful as Rey, then should he be able to pull off something like that? And not only that, but if you can pull off something like that at that age, then why in the world haven't we seen anything like that from any other Jedi?
Yeah. Well, also, I would like to say something right quick, just about those episodes of Rebels that you were talking about. I remember when those were coming out and people were complaining that they were filler episodes, and I
Uh-huh.
remember Filoni coming out and saying, like, "Hey, these episodes are not filler. You may not know why they're important right now, but they're not filler episodes." And it just kind of got me thinking while you were saying that, if he had some sort of foresight to these types of conversations, and he was thinking ahead of, like, I don't know, kind of establishing a lore for the whole uh kind of manipulating the living force and stuff inside living beings and animals and whatnot.
Well, it's entirely possible. I mean, he seems like he's always had a plan.
Certainly, I would agree. I would think that probably all the things that we're seeing coming into fruition in the Star Wars universe now, at least as a story, like the stories that they're telling, I would go so far as to say that Filoni and Favreau have probably had those in the works for a very long time, and that they've known that they were going to be telling those stories a long time before we knew that they were going to be telling those stories.
Yeah. But honestly, we another reason why it makes this problematic is because, like I was saying, why didn't anybody else have this power? And if anybody else did, why didn't somebody just go up and force heal the emperor before he became the emperor?
That one question that you just posed, I feel like breaks everything, you
Yeah,
know? And I feel like this is the issue with force healing that we have is that it serves as a yet another example of just Disney not really taking proper care of the lore. There shouldn't be this many things that serve to break the continuity of the story. You know, you say, "Oh, they're introducing this now, but how does that affect this?" You get what I'm saying? It
yeah,
seems like somebody is not asking these questions. And I feel like I don't know, I just don't understand how you have all these people who, serve as a team to, get Star Wars where it needs to be, you know, from a level from a story and narrative perspective, and they don't think of these things. It doesn't make any sense to me.
yeah. No, I completely agree. But honestly, I want to talk about this a little more in depth on Thursday. But I figured that we would share this news like pretty quickly because something like this needs to be talked about. And I mean, there's probably, I don't know if there's been anybody to talk about it just yet. I wanted to be one of the first few to talk about it, of course. Because one thing, I think this topic is super interesting, and another, like, I just wanted to be the first one. So deal with it, people.
Yeah.
But we will talk a little more about it on Thursday. We'll have a bunch of people there to talk about it with as well. This was just a quick update on force healing, and that we are going to do a part 2 on Star Wars topics next Thursday. So it's been great, but we have to go now.
We do.
So
Roll that
yeah.
outro.
One other thing though, Tuesday, the Tuesday stream is going to be more of like a chill stream. We're not. Well, no, it's not. It's going to be about Anakin. Actually, I'm just giving you all a quick teaser to what's to come. We're going to talk about not Anakin. Did I say Anakin? I meant Palpatine.
You did say Anakin. I was so
I
confused.
was
I
I
was
was
like, all
ready for
right.
Anakin, and then we talked about Palpatine before the stream, and I meant to change it. I don't know. I had Anakin in my head. I was originally planning Anakin. I think that's why. But no, we're going to talk about Palpatine in the Star Wars analysis stream next Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern. 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Let me make that
Not in the morning.
clear.
We are not
Not in the
streaming
morning.
at 6 a.m. We will be
No.
asleep.
I'll be at work,
I'll actually
unfortunately.
be in the process of getting ready for work, so I lied.
Oh, well. But we are going to go now. Respect each other and respect yourselves. And may the Force be with you. Always.
Always.